Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Alrighty. Hi, Marci. Thank you so much for being a guest today on Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Jory. I am so pleased to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
So, Marci, we've known each other for a handful of years. I was thinking back to when we first connected, and you actually attended my mindfulness courses that I taught, my gosh, I can't even think how many years ago, 6 years ago, maybe?
It was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I would say. Yep.
Okay, so that was our first connection. And what was it that drew you to come to mindfulness at that point?
So actually, one of my clients had come to one of your previous mindset or mindfulness classes, and she and I had a really strong connection because I felt like I was just beginning my personal development journey, so to speak. And she was kind of on one of her own, and she was much older than me. I mean, she could have been my mother, but yeah, she and I just had a really beautiful connection, and she ended up going to the class, really loved it, and got a lot of value out of the experience.
Oh, that's so good to know.
She loved you. She loved the class. And so she told me about it. And at the time I had heard about mindfulness, but I didn't really yet understand the concept.
Right.
And so I was curious about learning more about it. And it was really wonderful. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. And thus began our relationship and our friendship. And we've continued to work together on and off throughout the years. So it's always fun to me of how our intersections of our paths have crossed to lead us to where we are now. So tell our listeners, Marci, tell us about yourself and what you do. And then we're going to hear about your story and your journey.
Okay, so yes, I am Marci. I live in the Bay Area in California. I am a personal trainer. I've been doing that for the past 10 years. So that is my passion: health, fitness, nutrition. I mean, that's really where I started. And then now I'm kind of on this journey of mindfulness and self-growth, self-discovery. So trying to incorporate that as well into my career. I have an online business that I have also started and am pursuing that, trying to grow that platform. And yeah, it's just been an evolution, so to speak.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that you're combining now like the mindfulness and the mindset and the growth in combination with the health and nutrition, because I really don't see how it can't not go hand in hand.
Exactly. And I wish that I would have known about this when I first started, because I was very new and green to the industry. I came into the health and fitness space because we can get into this, later on, sure. But because I was really unhappy in my own life, in my body, not confident in how I looked. And so I used food and exercise as, I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but maybe a control mechanism for, to feel better about myself, to gain confidence and all of that. And I think because I had a really strong why, it was easy for me to do the work. So it wasn't
stick to a regimen, you mean?
Just stick to a regimen. I was so regimented, and it started in really middle school is when I kind of got into it. That's how
it's so hard to think about, because I've got middle school age daughters. So it really brings it home to say, wow, you started in middle school. But you know what? I know so many people that's where they start off being most stuck.
Exactly. Well, and that's where my body image issues started, because I was comparing myself to all of my friends who were thinner. The boys liked them. They didn't like me. I kind of felt like the ugly duckling, so to speak.
Yeah.
And even though I was never made fun of, no one teased me for my weight.
So it wasn't overt and it wasn't explicit.
No. I mean, I had probably conditioning from my mom, who made comments like, oh, a moment on your lips, forever on your hips. You know, she was kind of a chronic dieter.
Super subtle yet very powerful phrases that stick with us.
That stick with you and become really a part of your subconscious in your program.
Those words stick longer in your mind than the food on your hips.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that is right? So true. Oh, right? Absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, those are the things like that I remember my mom telling me about. You know, money doesn't grow on trees. A moment on your lips, forever on your hips, that kind of stuff. And that really becomes our conditioning and part of, you know, our personality and who we are. So anyway, again, I think my grandmothers both had some body image issues, and that's where my mom got it from. But they never made comments about my weight. No one ever teased me about my weight. My dad made a comment one time like, oh, you're getting a little chunky, but that was it. So really it was my own issue, so to speak, and my own discomfort. And so I started exercising when I was 12 years old, you know, like right before we went on a family vacation where I was going to have to be in a bathing suit, and I didn't feel good about myself. So that's how my journey started in fitness, and then it progressed from there. But yes, I was always very regimented. I could stick to a nutrition plan. I could stick to an exercise plan, no problem. And then when I started doing this as a career, I just felt like, well, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. Like, why is it so hard? Can I ask you
a question in with that before we jump ahead too far? When you were in that super regimented mindset and you were sticking to that plan, did you ever achieve what you were wanting to achieve? And if so, did it make you happy?
Oh, such a good question. No, absolutely not. I will say that when I was at my leanest and what you could call my most fit, I got down to 98 pounds of just, I wasn't pure muscle or anything like that, but I was lean and I was in shape. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. I shouldn't say I was miserable. Let me take that back, because I was in college, so I was having a good time. I was enjoying myself, you know, I was in a relationship and like I was having fun, but I wasn't.
That more deeper sense that not fulfilled.
That fulfillment, right?
And that's such a huge difference, because I look back at myself when I was at my lowest weight, and in my marriage when I was at times at my most unhappiest. But yet I will qualify and say I was happy. Like I was living my good life, and yet I wasn't fulfilled. And there's such a difference between being happy and being fulfilled. And unless you've experienced that dissonance, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was happy. I was deeply insecure, I would say. And nothing was ever good enough. So, you know, like I said, I maybe got up to around 130 pounds when I was in middle school, which 5'2", I wasn't lifting weights, so I didn't really have a lot of muscle. I mean, I was chunky. I was. And I have vivid memories of going shopping with my mom and barely fitting into the largest size of the junior section.
And yet the ironic thing, that's not by any means overweight, right?
No, it's not. But I think because it looked different because I wasn't exercising. It was just more fat than muscle, you know? So now I am close to that weight, but my body looks different because I have built a foundation, right? So I was overweight and unhappy, but
that deeper
it was
level.
Never enough. That's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
But I lost some weight, and then it's like, okay, well, I've lost the weight, but I can lose more weight. I can look different. There's always something more that could be done. I was never satisfied.
So when did it start to shift for you? When did you get out of that mindset or out of that habit or pattern because ultimately, I mean, that can, you know, that's really disordered thinking. Right? And you know, it's not, even though you might physically look healthy from the outside, it's not healthy on the inside.
Well, and I ruined my health, to be honest with you. And I am still paying the price of that today. You know, I've developed multiple autoimmune disorders, adrenal issues. I mean, just tons of health complications that were the result of chronic dieting, over exercising, and the stress in my mind because I hated myself, because I was so dissatisfied, because I was constantly comparing to other people and never feeling good enough. And again, I think that is rooted in childhood trauma.
Sure.
Things from my past, which I think everything really goes back to that.
It's got to start somewhere. And you know what, even more interestingly, I've been doing some research on transgenerational trauma and traumas that get passed down in our DNA. So even stuff that wasn't necessarily our personal experience, but is part of our DNA, this shit comes up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's there and it's real.
And that's what I really love about what's going on right now is I think that people are really, there's like an awakening happening. I truly believe that. And people are trying to change those generational patterns.
Oh, I believe so too.
I absolutely do. They're becoming more aware and understanding that who they are right now is not necessarily reflective of who they, like their spirit and who they are at their core. It is the result of conditioning and carrying on trauma from our parents' past, or,
sure.
Because they didn't know any better, right? And I love to say we're always doing the best we can with the tools that we have at our disposal at the time.
Right.
And my parents didn't know any of this. Like the internet wasn't available. So it's like we didn't have access to the information that we have now to really make these changes,
Right. I'm curious. It's so interesting that, the result of you working so hard and being so, quote, effective in your weight loss and exercise and nutrition regimen resulted in those autoimmune disorders. How do you relate to those disorders now?
Well, I think for a long time, they were a part of my identity. And, I'm a sick person, poor me, this and that. But I think now I've really turned like my mess into my message, so to speak.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's like an Oprah moment. That's
totally.
Right? Like that's that little, like, what does she say? Like, the tweetable moment or whatever
The tweet. Yeah. That's fun.
But I love that. Turn your mess into your message.
Exactly.
So what does that meant for you?
So I think for me, it's that you truly have to love yourself, as cliche as that sounds, at your core, like who you are, the gifts that you can bring into this world. And it's not about your physical appearance. And
what's on the inside that matters.
Yes. And
it is such a cliche, and it's so true though.
But it's so true. And it took me a really long time to learn that lesson. And I'm sure that you have talked to your patients about this, your clients, that sometimes you have to learn the lesson over and over again before it really resonates. And
and life keeps giving us opportunities to keep learning it until we get it.
Yes, that's kind of what I meant by that. So I think my big wake-up call was when my first husband ended our marriage, and it came out of nowhere. Like, so here's what it was. I thought that if I looked a certain way, I would always be lovable. No man would ever leave me. Like, that was how I developed my sense of worth. And I always believed that, if I was just fit and healthy and looked a certain way, that I would always have love in my life and I would always be secure. And the thing is, like we were talking about earlier, I may have looked that way on the outside, but I was struggling really deeply on the inside with feelings of inadequacy, low self-worth, never feeling good enough. And I think I took that out on him. So, and then I was also struggling with these health issues. It was a very scary time. And so,
a lot of stressors in a relationship.
It's a lot of stressors in a relationship. And he was very compassionate and understanding for a while. And I always felt like, he's never going to leave me. And I'm always going to have someone there to not necessarily take care of me, because I'm a fiercely independent person, but I'm always going to have someone's love and support as I go through this. And then out of nowhere one day, like we were having some issues, but he never said, I am so unhappy in this relationship that if things don't change, I'm out. And he came home one day and was like, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And I said, excuse me? Like,
so it was almost like all your worst fears were actualized.
Oh, absolutely. Like I will never forget that moment. And I mean, it was embarrassment. It was fear. You know, what is my life going to look like? No one's ever going to love me. And so what I had to learn after that is, and this is another part of my message, is people care far less about how you look and much more about how you make them feel.
Sure.
And you can be the most beautiful person in the world, but if your soul and your spirit and your attitude and your energy is ugly, no one's going to want to be around you. You know, it's just the truth. So it doesn't matter what your face looks like, what your body looks like, all of that. And so
you mean that cellulite on the back of my legs really doesn't matter?
I really don't think it does. And I mean, I have it too. And I know sometimes I still struggle with it because like I'm seeing like the visible signs of aging, you know, like, and that is really hard because like I still feel very youthful, but I mean, I've got the cellulite. Now it's like, you know, the wrinkles and the bags under your eyes and all of that. And you're like, oh gosh. But I really do think it's the energy that you bring to your relationships and how you treat other people. That is what matters. And that's what they really care about.
Yeah. So how are you harnessing this into your career? So you're a trainer and you're also working, which I've had you train with me before. And I wish I had more availability in my busy schedule because I do love when I train with you and I feel really good. It's just, unfortunately, I don't have the space for it now, but I'm sure I'll be back there again with you because Marci is awesome.
Thank you.
But how have you really harnessed that message? Because it's not just sitting there doing squats, right? It's not just sitting there, you know, doing whatever other painful things you'd make me do.
Yeah.
So how are you harnessing this? I mean, you mentioned earlier about turning this into an online business. So what does that even look like as an online business? Are you training people online? So how is that turning into a career for you outside of the gym?
Right. So I started on Instagram and I was very reluctant to do it. Actually, a friend of my ex-husband's was the first person who introduced me to Instagram. And she said, oh, you should.
I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry to say, you guys who are listening have to follow Marci on Instagram. She has such value add posts. She posts so religiously and dedicates so much time and effort into what messages she wants to give. And I know that she has been named like some top people in the fitness world who have gotten accolades on her page. So the person who told you to check out Instagram was onto something because you do it beautifully.
Thank you so much, Jory. I appreciate that. So maybe my first marriage, there was something to it, like, right? There was an opportunity there.
So you know what? You wanted to be unconditionally loved, and now you've got like almost 70,000 people loving you. So you got actually what you needed.
Exactly. So, you know, I posted my first Instagram post like years ago, and it was a picture or a video actually of my aunt's pet tortoise, which she had put jewels on, and it was eating watermelon. And I just put it up there and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. So for years, like at that point, I didn't even know what an online business really was. Like I was still training people in person. And I was really just starting to share, you know, my life. So pictures of my dog and vacations that we were going on and food that I was making. And then I kind of started to realize, all right, I don't want to only be training people in person. I would like more freedom and autonomy in my life. And at that point, the blogging was becoming really popular. And I started following, you know, people in the fitness industry who were making a career doing that. And I was like, all right, I need a piece of this action. And it took me a really long time because of, you know, limiting beliefs and all of that, you know, again, going back to feeling like I wasn't good enough. And
so interesting how the damn limiting beliefs show up in so many areas of our life. I mean,
so many areas.
That's why it's always a practice, right?
Always. Yeah. And it's like, you know, you make one step forward and sometimes then you go 2 steps back, and it's always a journey, you know, it's never linear.
Yeah. And as I always say, we never fully arrive there.
No,
right?
no.
It's the path, and it's that cliche of it is about the journey, not the destination. Because once we arrive there, we have a new journey ahead of us.
Which I say to my personal training clients all the time. If you are so focused on the goal, you are never going to be satisfied. Because again, like I was saying earlier about my own body image, every time I lost the weight or got a little bit closer to how I wanted to look, it's like, okay, what's next? There's always more work to be done, I can get my glutes to look better or whatever it may be, right? So, but it really is about gaining satisfaction out of doing the work on a day-to-day basis and making yourself proud, essentially, and showing up, doing the work even when you don't want to do it. That is what builds strength and character and confidence, not necessarily how you look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what are some of maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you do with your online clients? Again, since you're not in the gym training them, what are the things that you can share with our listeners, maybe some of your favorite ways to get started on this shift towards, not focusing on the goal per se and making some of those more internal shifts?
Right. So, going back to what I was saying in the beginning of the podcast was, I was so young when I started training people in person that I did not understand all of the I didn't understand the mindset component. Again, because it was easy for me and my ego was not involved. I didn't have these limiting beliefs about I can't do this. I saw myself doing it. Right. And I saw the results that I got. And so I thought that it had to be that easy for everybody else. And I was also, very much of the good food, bad food. You can't only eat this. You can't eat that. Right. And it was just so restrictive. And it was just if you're not getting results, you're not trying hard enough. And it's really not that difficult.
So now you're bigger on focusing on the mindset to start?
Much more. Because I realized when I get on a sales call with people, we talk about their goals, and I always go back to pretty much their childhood. Where did this all start? And if you are someone who has a hard time overeating, where do you think that began? And it's always oh, well, my parents were of the mindset that I always had to clean my plate. And so now I finish all my food. Or, it was a comment that somebody said to them. My best friend, or one of my really good friends who is also in the online space, she was struggling with overeating, binge eating, and she hired me to hold her accountable. And it was oh, maybe you're working too hard. Maybe you don't have a good enough self-care practice. That's why you're overeating. Or maybe you're restricting a little bit, not eating enough. So we were doing all of these habit changes.
But it's got to understand the root of where it came from.
Well, exactly. And so she texted me after the Super Bowl. It's yep, I overate again. I was all right, there's got to be something deeper. And I was reading a book at the time called The Big Leap, which all goes back to your limiting beliefs. And I asked her, I said, was there somebody in your life who said something to you that in that moment made you believe that you did not have the potential or the capability to reach your goal? And she was silent, and she almost started to cry.
Wow.
And she was yeah, this boss of mine a couple of years ago when I was working in the architecture field, we were on a bike ride, and she said to me, she's wow, Sam, you're way more athletic than you look. And in that moment, she felt no matter how hard she worked, she was never going to look the way that she would. So it almost became, or did become, this form of self-sabotage. In her mind, she always heard those words, you're never going to look good no matter how hard you work. So it's every time that
so
she got closer, why even bother? But then every time she got closer to achieving what she wanted to, she sabotaged because she felt she didn't deserve it. Or she felt she was never going to be able to actually get there because of one comment.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And, so much of the work that I do with my clients is looking at the language in which they speak to themselves in their own minds.
Yes.
And we say things automatically without even recognizing the power of our own words. And like even with my own daughters as well, and I'm sure they just love when I remind them of this, but as soon as they say, I can't, like I can't do this, but whatever it is, whether it's homework or dealing with a difficult challenge, whatever it is, as soon as I hear them say, I can't, I say to them, you've already decided you won't. Can't is a complete fixed mindset versus, so I will have them reframe it to be able to say, it's hard to versus I can't. And it's so subtle, but it's so powerful because by saying it's hard to gives us the possibility for figuring it out.
Yeah.
It gives us the availability to understand, okay, it's hard and I can still do it.
Yeah, and it's like whatever you tell yourself, you're going to believe. And
absolutely.
I read a book called Conscious Language a while back, and it basically, the premise of the book is whatever you put after I am is what it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, So I am weak. Insert whatever negative word about yourself. And
then you add into that our negativity bias, where our brain has been designed to focus on the negative. So we're going to be drawn to those negatives much more than we're going to be drawn to the positives. So we're already fighting an evolutionary uphill battle to look for the good. And so part of that, I think, is the self-compassion to realize it's not our fault. We've been wired this way.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're wired to stay safe. Our brain wants to protect us. And I love what you said about the negativity bias, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently, because I still have my own limiting beliefs, especially when it comes to my online business. I look at what other people are doing, and it's like, here I am saying that the words you speak are going to become what you believe and become your reality. And I'm like, oh, that person says it so much better, I shouldn't say it. Or I'm not great speaking on camera, I could never do what that person's doing. Like, those are things that I am still working very hard to overcome.
Yeah.
And feeling like of, I guess, rejection and feeling like I'm not being seen, all of that, which again, like goes way back. And it's interesting because like what you just said about me, like Marci has, 70,000+ followers, like all these people who love her, yet I still focus on the few people who made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I was never going to make it,
And it goes back to one of my favorite quotes of energy flows where intent goes.
Oh, yeah.
So if your intent is focused on those few, then you're not going to see, the abundance. And that is true with whatever. Well, Marci, I feel like you and I could absolutely talk for hours and hours about this. But tell my listeners and who would want to find you, how they could find you. And this will also be in the show notes. But how could they find you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram. So it's just Marci Nevin, my name. And then I do have a website where you can contact me there. That's Marci Nevin Fitness. But pretty much all of my information is on Instagram. So,
well, I am sure you're going to get some additional likes and followers and people reaching out to you after this. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I will do my best to come in for a personal training session soon.
I would love that. Thanks for having me, Jory.
Thanks, Marci.
Okay, bye.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.